Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jonathan Blackwood with Commercial Integrator. On behalf of HDBaseT, we are streaming live from the HDBaseT booth at ISE 2020. And we're very lucky to have David Meyer with CEDIA here interviewing with us. David, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I know that, well, first off, what's your role with CEDIA and how does that apply to HDBaseT and how have you guys worked together?
Okay, well, my role, I work in the Technology and Standards Department with CEDIA in technical research. It is a highly technical field and incredibly broad. There's an immense knowledge base within CEDIA, but a lot of it is actually in people's heads, in the general knowledge base. So it's my job to collate that information, bring it all together, make it accessible to our education team, and make it, or impart that knowledge to the industry in a meaningful way. So figure out what's important.
Yeah, and as we've seen with a lot of solutions that are even here on the show floor, data and analytics and that information that's coming out has really helped to drive decisions. And decisions that integrators are making should come from what other integrators are doing and what people think. So I know that you guys did some research into AV over IP and HDBaseT. Could you tell us the genesis of that research and how you guys conducted it?
Okay, so one of the things we do, there's a lot of vehicles for getting information out, and one of them is white papers. And we have recently published a white paper on AV over IP, and in fact I've just finished with one on HDBaseT as well, which is going to be published very shortly. And it was interesting that we've got these two papers kind of back to back, because they're both in the same space. It's about getting signals distributed around to various displays in a building.
Yeah, and I know with AV over IP and HDBaseT, sometimes the industry likes to pit those two against each other and say, it's one or the other, but your finding has found that that's not the case at all, that they're much more complementary. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, certainly. With the many years of HDBaseT, it just became the go-to solution for extension of HDMI, especially as data rates in HDMI have got higher and higher. The HDMI cable has ended up becoming shorter and shorter, so it's just good old physics. And HDBaseT proved itself to be a reliable and robust extension technology. And then came along the matrix switch, and a great solution, but in a large system can be somewhat cumbersome. And the fixed dimension nature of a matrix switch, where we may have a mirrored number of inputs and outputs, 4x4, 8x8, 16x16, and on we go, can quite often not be the most practical solution. If you only have, say, 4 sources, but you need 16 displays, that means going to a very large matrix. And you want to then add a couple more displays, we may end up exceeding the size that's required. So there's been some problems with the cost and some pushback as far as that goes. And AV over IP was seen as the solution. It makes sense, just put it on the network. But the reality is that to get AV on a network requires high levels of compression, and quite often, well, compression itself is not a problem. Compression can be done very, very well. Everything we watch is pretty much compressed anyway through the source. But everything's changing. It's changing very, very rapidly, and I really just don't see AV over IP as a solution that's going to be the be-all and end-all that's going to replace HDBaseT. It's an alternative. There can be hybrid solutions where we can see both of them working together, and because there's more consumers that are streaming content directly to displays around the home, it actually can reduce the need for a distribution system in the first place. But then the increasing quality of that content can actually bring us right back to square one. We come full circle, and now we're back to a source device wanting to get a really high quality signal to a primary display. And the way to do that is through point-to-point connectivity.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the residential side, that quality is extremely important because it's, that's ultimately the person wants that digital signage up there so that they can watch the screen, which sometimes on the commercial side, it's so that many people can see the screen as they're going by. But this AV over IP versus HDBaseT, obviously CEDIA writes to the residential market, but it's bigger than just residential versus commercial or this or that. It's really just AV over IP, HDBaseT, and I like what you said with hybrid solutions, how they can work together. And I know that for integrators, you make so many products work together, you make so many systems work together, why not make the standards work together?
In residential is a challenging space because everybody's a consumer. The CEOs and boards of the biggest companies out there are still consumers when they go home. And in the CEDIA space, we're actually dealing with very complex systems. Every single system you put together can be completely different. So no two alike. There is a somewhat more repeatability, larger systems, but with repeatability in the commercial space. And we're dealing with some higher end formats. We could be talking 4K with HDR, formats like Dolby Vision, and even gamers, where latency is a big issue. But then on the commercial side, medical and various other applications where latency is a bad thing. But the main thing we've found that I've done through my research with AV over IP is quite often the compromise to some of those complementary features. Not just a matter of latency. Latency in a lot of cases may not be a problem. In a sports bar, for example, we're dealing with a fraction of a second. It's probably no big deal. But if we've got a system which is actually not enabling Dolby Vision to work properly, for example, that is a problem. So the interoperability, just getting the stuff to work, that's what the average integrator wants. They just need to plug it in and have it reliably work. AV over IP has a lot of advantages, but there's a complexity with the setup and the network and configuring the network. Sometimes whether it's a shared network with other devices that are already there, and video is incredibly bandwidth hungry. Research shows that it's in the order of about 80% of all IP traffic globally now is video. It's huge. So the best way to get a very high demanding, say 4K 60 Dolby Vision signal from a gaming console to a display is through point-to-point connectivity, and that means either long length HDMI, an active cable for example, or something like HDBaseT 3.0 solution, which can actually now support up to 18 gig HDMI equivalent uncompressed. And it doesn't have to strip out those other features and try to reconstitute them at the other end like some other systems do.
And it's like rather than try and fit a round peg into a square hole and make only one of these standards work for your entire project, why not make both of them? Because at the end of the day, what matters most is the customer's happiness with the system, with what they end up seeing. I often get asked, look, what do you prefer, HDBaseT or AV over IP? And if I can quote Joel Silver of ISF, he says, what's your favorite screwdriver? Like flat or Phillips? Yeah.
And the answer is, well, it depends on the application. You can't just choose your favorite screwdriver and expect it to work. So same thing. There is a lot of complementary aspect to this. Do not choose one and just lock onto that all the time. Keep options open. Have a look around.
Yeah, without a doubt, that makes a ton of sense. The screwdriver question, perfect comparison
there.
Yeah, so.
Absolutely.
And David Meyer from CEDIA, thank you so much for your insight into these two standards.
Okay, and thanks for your time.